were being videotaped with everything that was going on around the footy club. I'll spew up! That was the year of the dog. Essendon spies, that's all they're doing, I'll report it back. So then we'd all jump into our cars, drive down the Geelong Highway to the Werribee ground, and we had the whole ground gridded out, painted. I think, if you speak to Essendon people, they're still dirty. They reckon we cheated them out of a win because it was not in the spirit of the game.
The recruitment of Benny Cousins.
Look, I believe in second chances. Some people go, no, you've had your lot in life, but I believe in second chances.
Well, our guest today, 43 years in the game of AFL footy, 14 years playing, 16 coaching, 13 in the media, 3-time Premiership player for the Hawks, Mr. Terry Wallace. Welcome to the dos&d show.
Wade, Danny, looking forward to it. I've seen a few of your shows along the way, but looking forward to being in the hot seat.
I appreciate the support. We know you guys have a bit of a personal connection. I'm sure we'll touch on that a little bit later on, but we're very grateful to have you here. We know you don't do a whole lot of media anymore, so we're very lucky, mate. But maybe as a starting point, as you are out of the spotlight a bit these days, maybe bring us all up to speed with what you've kind of been doing the last few years.
Nothing. I retired 2020 was my last year of involvement, and that was obviously during the COVID period, and when the hub was on up in Queensland, we were calling games from down in Melbourne, driving into our studios with no one on the roads. It was a bit of a pleasure, that part, but that was about the only pleasure of the COVID period. But the 2020 grand final, which was the Tigers' victory against the Cats, and that was up at the Gabba. That was my last night of work.
Okay.
So I retired. I always was one of those that when I retired, I'd been in the public eye for 43 years, as I sort of said. Some of that very good, some of that not so good along the journey. I always had that one that when I retired, that was it. I didn't want to go off and be doing speeches and talks and discussions. I didn't want to be Mr. Dial a quote for media to ring up and sort of, what do you think of this or what do you think of that? So I really haven't done anything. And if anyone calls, I just sort of say, look, I'm not doing that sort of stuff anymore. Obviously, Wade convinced me to come out of
I was like, come on, Terry, come on.
for the day and to pop in. But I just decided cold turkey, that's it. Still follow it really, really closely and regularly, but just somebody else to have an opinion these days, not me.
Sure.
And there's obviously a personal element of why you're following closely. Obviously, your son Brent, he's umpiring in the AFL system too.
Yeah, he did a game, he's doing every weekend, but this weekend I went to his game. It was Life Members Function at the MCG. The weekend just passed, and that was for the Hawks. I go to functions for all the three clubs that I was involved in, but it was Hawthorn's this time around, and he was actually umpiring the game, which is a little bit of a different dynamic. I was getting a bit of stick from all my old teammates about a couple of decisions here and there, but so follow it from that reason. But when you've been involved in it, it's been my life. So I still love the game and I still love all the things, and I don't necessarily agree with some of the commentary around what people are saying about certain clubs or certain coaches, but I just do that within my own lounge room, not anywhere else publicly.
I was going to say, so what is your relationship with the game now away from it? You don't, like you say, you don't have to give opinions anymore, you don't have to coach or play. So what is your relationship with it?
Yeah, I would watch still 6 games a weekend. So that's how involved I am still with the sport, just as a spectator. Do I go that regularly? Not really. If there's a certain particular reason to go, yes. I don't actually go and watch Brent's games live. I find to actually sit at home and to be able to have a look at the replays and sort of see the different angles, I get more out of what comes on camera than what you do necessarily trying to get a live view of it, because at the ground it's difficult at times with the 4-umpire system to know which one's actually called the particular call at any one time. So normally I watch his games there, plus I don't want to get into any punch-ups with supporters of the opposition sides who mightn't see it the same way as I do. So I'm a proud dad, so it's probably better off to stay away from that environment.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to maybe kickstart with the coaching, and being, a Bulldogs nuffy myself, which D loves to tease me for, Terry. But maybe let's wind the clock back a bit, and the '96, that first year coaching the Dogs, or even prior to that, you're a reserves coach. You actually coached Danny's uncle. We've worked out in a premiership for the reserve side as well.
Paul Sadley. Yeah, so I suppose once I finished playing, the natural progression was to assist the club, and the best way at that time was to get involved and help the younger boys around the footy club, which was coaching the reserves. And so I had a couple of seasons coaching the reserves and was fortunate enough to win a premiership, which it doesn't matter what level it's at. You go to your local sports and they're all at this time of the year, everyone's trying to get that, elusive flag. And reserve grade's always a little bit different because it depended on who the senior side takes off you at times over the course of the year, whether you can get there. But it was still exciting, and for a club that hadn't won that much of anything, to get a bit of silverware was good fun. And then it led on to the '96 season. I actually wasn't coaching the reserves, so Brian Royal come in and coached the reserves, and so I was more overseeing the senior team and reserve team. Call it head of footy. That was, I suppose they didn't have a role like that back in the day, but that's what it would be called now. And so I took on that role until halfway through the year. That was when Alan Joyce stepped away, and I was asked to take on the senior role with no guarantees. And it's always a difficult role because you just don't know. I had it for 10 weeks and there was zero guarantee. So the reality was at the end of that time, I was either going to, in my mind, be the senior coach or probably not be at the club, because not many times that the guy who takes on the interim coach can really stay there after that. So, with young kids, big bulky mortgage, it's probably a time of trepidation. You just don't know what's around the corner.
And is it part-time at that stage, or was it full-time?
I was full-time, so I had a really good job working with Sky Channel. I virtually ran Victoria for Sky Channel. That was out of GTV9. So when I was coaching the reserves, it was part-time and I was full-time with Sky Channel. But the club asked me to come on in that footy manager role once they sort of developed it a little bit, and that was my first full-time role, which was the start of '96. And so it was weird. I've left this high-end job that I've been at for 10 years to go back into football to try to help the club out. But then now I've been thrown into the senior role, where likelihood if I don't get the job, I don't go back to that footy manager's role again because I've dipped the toe in the water as the senior coach. So tricky times.
Sure. To go from interim to senior coach, did they put you through an interview process? Did they interview others? So you hear this a lot sometimes in the media now when an interim coach takes over and they're not happy if they start interviewing all these other guys. What was the process for you?
It was very interesting because all at the same time as I was going through my 10 weeks, the club was going through turmoil, which, Wade, you'd be very well known that the club's gone through a lot of turmoil, ups and downs along the years. So there was a board battle at exactly the same time, board management battle at the same time. So was I dealing with the board that was in charge then to sort of see whether I was going to be going ahead, or was I dealing with the board that were trying to come in and overtake things?
Sure.
So that was tricky in itself. So the board that was trying to come in was David Smorgon.
Okay.
The board that was in was Peter Gordon. Two really big names in the history of the football club. Yeah. So am I really dealing with Peter, who's running the place at the moment, or am I dealing with David, who looks like he's going to get the handover to that? So bit of politics involved in all of that. I must say I had lined pretty strongly with David and his incoming board, because I felt that that was where the club was heading towards. And if that was going to be the future, I had to try to generate myself around, sort of aligning there and making sure that I was part of what they saw as the future. They didn't open it up. We did well enough in that last bottom end of games, and with 4 or 5 discussions with the incoming board, they decided to back me in at that stage, in conjunction with, obviously, clearly the senior players and the mainstays around the time, which was Stephen Wallace, people like Scotty Wind, those type of people, Libber, around the footy club at the time, that sort of said they were liking the direction that we had headed in that 10 weeks.
Can you maybe share a little bit more info about what Footscray was at that time? As in, everyone hears about it's real blue collar, it's real tough, it's you hear stories about the change rooms, and it was a real, we're a battling club. Maybe share a bit of real detail around what it really was.
So okay, the year is 1996. For anyone that's watched any videos of the time or anything like that, that was the year of the dog year, which was interesting in itself, because we were being videotaped with everything that was going on around the footy club. That tape's there if anyone ever still wants to have a bit of a look at what it looked like back in those times. It was still amateur hour. There was no semblance of professionalism really around how footy clubs were running and operating at the time. Facilities were awful, to say the least, whether that's the indoor variety or on the field and the ground and what we had to deal with on the ground. Really amateur hour in that way. And that wasn't only the Bulldogs. There was a lot of clubs that were still sort of working and operating under that in 1996. I would have thought between 96 and 2000, when the Olympics were on, was the real flip around of when things started to become professional. Full-time players no longer go to work and try to fit in your football after hours. That was about the changing period. I can remember maybe the 97, 98 season were seasons where we had half our squad, and I'm saying pre-season, half the squad would train 6 o'clock in the morning so that they could get to work, and half the squad would come in at 10 in the morning and do their training because they were starting to transition to full-time footy. So, that was around the time period. But it was us versus them, the Wests, we're up against it. We are the battlers. We haven't had a lot of success, but boy, we try our guts out. It was that sort of feel. And as much as what I loved that about the footy club, they had to get to a stage at some stage where they went, no, we're more than that. We can compete with the best, and we are having that ability to sort of step ourselves out of that and be a Collingwood and be a Carlton and be an entity in its own self. And that's why all those years later, when 2016, when you saw the Sunday afternoon at the ground when they won the Premiership, and you saw how big it was, that you went, well, that's what we were always trying to achieve all the way back then. So, to see that, I was really proud of how far the footy club had come.
You mentioned Year of the Dogs, and there's obviously one very famous clip that has been taken out of that and will live on forever. I'm sure we'll get to that later on. But that we were talking off air. It was a video that we both watched a lot as kids, and I'm not even a dog supporter, but it was so before its time. Do you remember that whole idea being pitched to you, and what did you have to sign off on at the time?
Nothing for me.
There you go.
I had nothing to do with it. So it was Peter Gordon led. How it originally started off, I don't really know, but Peter Gordon went to Alan Joyce. Alan Joyce, very private man. I was really surprised that he actually agreed as the senior coach to allow it to occur. But I think Peter went to him and sort of said, look, we're really struggling as a footy club, struggling to have any identity, to be able to draw any people, corporate types, I would think, to our football club. If we do this, maybe this might open a few doors for us and help us survive at that stage. So that was sort of done in the early part of the year. I'm working in a management sort of role at that stage. So I was still around the place, but really had nothing to do with the decision making, and it really didn't have anything to do with my role. I wasn't mic'd up or anything like that. It was more the senior coach. But little did I know that halfway through the year, Alan wasn't going to be there anymore, and now I've got the microphones on me, and that changed it, and that's all sort of shown in the vision of that particular production. But so it was thrown upon me, thrust upon me. So a lot of times over the years, people have sort of said, he's a bit of a show pony, and he's always had that sort of way about him. I had nothing to do with it whatsoever. I just walked into it at the time. So.
Sure.
Now, Jared, throw it up. It'd be rude not to show a little bit of this documentary, mate. This is no word of a lie. My sister found that video at the op shop, I reckon, 4 or 5 weeks ago, and it was in mint condition. She bought it for me. I mean, I don't have a VCR anymore, so I won't be watching it. But I remember watching it as a kid. Yeah, here we go. Here's the. Terry, you get spoken to about this every day, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, it never leaves. It's one of those gifts that keeps on giving all the way along.
You blokes, but I can't fucking bear losing a game like that. Look, fantastic effort. But what does a fucking fantastic effort mean? It doesn't get us anything. We don't get diddly squat. We don't get a point. They don't give us something just fucking for getting close. It means nothing. If you can think that I'm going to be happy walking into this room when we get beaten still, we can't be. We just can't accept it. I don't know about you guys. Like, if I see one bloke walk out of here, getting a pat on the back from people out there for a good effort, I'll spew up. Because it's just not acceptable. We were rebel in that first quarter. Absolutely bloody disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful. Yeah, 3 quarters. We worked our asses off. We worked our backsides off to get back into the game. But the game is about 120 minutes of footy, and that was the most winnable one that we'd get for a long time, and we just pissed it down the drain. We absolutely pissed that game down the drain. Don't any one of you forget about it. Take away one thing from this game. You have the ability to play in this competition and play it very, very, very well. We cannot go from that, right, which we displayed in 3 quarters, back to what we displayed in the first quarter ever again. Ever again. Go and have your showers. We'll see you back at the social club.
Oof.
I don't reckon many people would actually know where that clip came from. A lot of people that have seen the famous vision. Yeah, know of it.
From the doco.
Well, yeah, so what are those memories bring back, Terry?
A little embarrassing, isn't it?
I think, in fairness, in terms of how sprays go, I think it's it's not even a spray, it's very measured, in my opinion.
Well, it was meant to be that way.
Yeah.
Walking across the ground, I had spoken to Gordon Casey, who was part of our match committee, and sort of said, I've got a message that I'm going to get across to the boys once we get into the room. So it was meant to be that way. It was emotive, there's no doubt about that. You know, the swear words probably, as a senior coach would be now, I don't think you would see as much of that these days. Still there, trust me.
I was going to say, I reckon it would still be
behind closed doors.
It's
It's still there, trust me, but not to the level or the degrees, I don't think. But my message was loud and clear that we were good enough to compete against the better sides in the competition, but we were just at times still sort of going through that period, not believing enough in ourselves that we were, and we had highs and lows. And that was, the way that it sort of went. And around the club, near enough had been good enough. Since I'd come from Hawthorn and had that grand final experience and done that, the Hawthorn mentality, and I'm talking about supporter base mentality, was, we've got to be the best, or nothing else is acceptable. You know, you could get to a grand final, that's not acceptable. You've got to win the grand final. Where I got to the Bulldogs, and I can remember playing in a game, about my fourth game at the Bulldogs as a player, and walking off the ground at half time. I think we played Carlton at the Whitten Oval, and we were getting a standing ovation, and we were like 13 points behind. I couldn't get my head around what was going on. It was that they were competing very, very well against a good side, because that's all the supporter base had been accustomed to, was good efforts. And that was the pat in the back, spew up sort of thing, because I was just sick of seeing people getting patted on the back for being okay. In that particular game, we were 7 goals down against Collingwood at quarter time, and we won the last 3 quarters. And the message was, well, why can't we do that for 4 quarters? And why can't we start to win a couple of these? And if we don't start winning a couple of these, I won't have a job.
Yes.
That was a hidden message behind things. But, and it did. It turned. Over the 10-week period, it slowly turned. And I've got to say, from almost that week onwards, we just got a little bit better, along the journey. I mean, I think our last game of the season, we played Essendon at the MCG that year, and they played off in the preliminary final, the Lockett point, after the final siren. So they were a very good side. We played them on a Friday night at the MCG, and there was one kick across the ground, got intercepted, or otherwise we would have won the game. So we were within 2 points, 3 points of elite sides towards the end of the year, hence why I kept my job. We didn't win a lot of games, but margins that were 45 points at the start of the year had become 1 kick margins by the end of the year. So we were seeing progression at that stage. I don't think I've ever used diddly squat.
Ever since that day.
Imagine what comes out in a spray, yeah.
Gosh, yeah, I'm surprised how you can stay so measured in that scenario. Now, just quickly, this episode is brought to you by our best mates, Fleet Plan Hire Solutions. They're just the best when it comes to anything earth moving.
That's right. That's the key word, earth moving. You need any equipment, big or small, go to Fleet Plan Hire Solutions, because they will source it for you. They'll help with the logistics. And, of course, all those like nitty-gritty legal jargon that we don't understand, they also cover that too, don't they, Dos?
Yeah, everything's sorted thanks to them. So head to fbh.com.au. Find out more today.
We'll get back in the episode with Terry Wallace.
But I guess the jump, though, it's still a big jump, Terry, like to go from where the club was in 96. I mean, did you feel like you exceeded your own expectations? I know the prelim in 97, everyone talks about that, but to go from where the club was to where they went to achieve even, a top 4 finish and finish in a prelim, it's still a massive jump.
It was, because for all intensive purposes, we were actually last in the year prior in 96, because Fitzroy finished last, we finished second last, but Fitzroy had the jump up into Brisbane and with the extra players and everything, so it wasn't Fitzroy anymore, so they basically disbanded and become Brisbane, so we were almost the worst side going into the next year in the competition. So it was a big jump, but we had good players, and it had only been 2 or 3 seasons prior to that they were playing finals, and they just lost their way for whatever purpose or reason and lost confidence. I can remember the very first day I went in and got all the players into a room. I'd filled the whiteboard before they got there with every achievement that every single one of our senior players had achieved over his entire career. Juniors, all the way through under-19s, best and fairests, everything that they'd done, and filled the whiteboard with it. And I was sort of saying to them, the competition sees you as 15th, I see you as that. And that's the way I'm going to treat you, and that's the way we're going to go about doing everything. You're that, you're not the latter position. So that's the way that we sort of started to turn it. And we had a few things that we did at the time. North Melbourne won the Premiership in 96. They were in a position where everyone follows the leader in this competition. It's ridiculous that it's still going on now. Somebody does something, somebody else follows the leader and does exactly the same. So at that time, all the talk was about North Melbourne and what they had done, and they started their year slow, had really pretty quiet pre-seasons, and built as the time went on And so everyone was sort of trying to peak towards September, which sounds natural, but we were coming from so far behind. If we tried to follow that same system, how are we going to catch them? So what we sort of said is, we're going to hit round 1 like it's September, like we're going to just train the house down and just do more and more and more than anyone else. No one used to get the balls out before Christmas back in those days. We had them out in October and just changed the way that we were going to go about it completely so that we were ready to go. The whole thing was to try to get the boys back some confidence that if we could win the early games, the first month, don't worry about what's going to go on in September because we've finished 15th. So, we just got to get on a roll and get sort of going. And it worked. Everyone seemed to follow the North Melbourne process. We went completely the different way, got off to a real kickstart at the start of the year and continued. Like, we hit some flat spots in the back half of the season of 97, but then realigned as it got towards finals and had a real crack at it and missed by an inch.
As a coach, how do you get confidence up in a group? So there's, like you said, there's not much difference between the playing group between one year and the next. You're saying ups and downs in the season, but there's a big difference on field when a team's playing with confidence versus lack of. How do you as a coach get that out of a group and maintain it?
A few ways. I mean, one was the whiteboard, for example, just this is who I see you as, and this is, I have that much faith in you guys. You think about your whole life. If someone comes to you and they have absolute, complete confidence in you, you don't want to let that person down. You want to do everything you possibly can within your abilities to try to get it to be that way. So I wanted to really be that type of coach that I just had complete faith and confidence in the lads. Doing things a little differently, I think, can gain confidence that we're not like them or them or them. We've come up with a few ideas that no one else is doing. We believe we're ahead of the game, which gives players confidence in their own right that they think that they're on the cutting edge of whatever is going on within the industry. So we tried to do that. The other thing that we did do, and people criticised us at the stage, was we really opened up the footy club publicly, so to the media in particular. So we sort of said, almost like the American version of things, the NFL, come in, our rooms are open. You want to speak to any of our people, you're more than welcome to speak to anyone you want. I got the stage where I thought, when I'd grown up as a youngster, Collingwood were on the back pages of the paper all the time. Still are, but nothing changes that much. But back in those days, it was Peter McKenna and Len Thompson and Des Tuddenham, and there were stories on all the Collingwood people all the time. And I went, how can we change the Bulldogs to become not Collingwood, because that was such a big club, but to have our own sort of, I suppose, our own way of doing things. And so we opened ourselves completely up to the media. We had a media press day before the start of the year where we stood up in front of them and said we were going to play finals that year. They all laughed at us, but just opened things up completely. And my theory was that if you're going to do that as a player and you're going to sort of say these things, now you better live it.
Yeah.
So it was, in a way,
very ahead of its time.
Yeah, in a way, it was to put a little bit more pressure on them to perform and go about it. But it did. There were stories on us all the time. Whether it was in the glossy mags or whether it was in the daily paper, we had stories and stories and stories. And as we started winning, people wanted to get to know us more. What is going on down at the Whitten Oval? This has never happened. The only reason the media ever come to the Whitten Oval was when a coach was going to get the sack.
Yeah.
That was about it. So, so there were just a few little trigger points that I thought just kick-started it all.
Yeah.
So.
I'd love to know what actually, this literally just came to me, if there was a dietitian or anyone around at that stage, because whatever you're feeding them, the father-sons are breeding through today.
Yes.
You've got bloody Luke Darcy, Sam Darcy. I saw Croft, his son played a ripping game yesterday, Jordan Croft. You've got Libba.
Westy,
and then
Riley
Westy,
West,
Scotty West and Riley West. Like that's
Wallace for a while.
Oh yeah, that's true. Oh geez, yeah, Wallace as well. I mean, Hunter as well.
Yes,
Hunter
correct.
as well. So, geez, I don't know what you were doing back then, but it's worked for this next generation too.
Yeah, but fantastic. Well, for a start, and then we left out Chris Grant's daughter.
Of course,
of course,
exactly
as well.
right.
So, a generation of them, and I think that's a fantastic thing. In fairness to the club, and I wasn't a part of this, they were brilliant in bringing those kids up with the club, so that their ability to know that they're father-son potential and bringing them down in holiday periods and doing clinics with them in the early days, but then really upskilling them. I thought the Bulldogs did that better than nearly any other club that I've seen along the journey. So you have to still have the ability there clearly, but I think that they worked it better than a lot of the other clubs did in the early days.
Now, you mentioned the Dogs becoming this, all over the back pages and front pages of glossy mags and everything. And I'm not sure, this is a question without notice, but were you the coach when the Dogs players, I think it was a pre-season trip, there's an old story that, I'm not sure if hijack's probably the wrong word, but they were on a plane ride, I think, to America, and they what happened when you got wind of all of that information back here? I presume you weren't on the plane.
No, well, so that was earlier.
Oh, okay.
So that was Doug Hawkins'
okay.
playing days. Might have been Robert Groenewegen, I think, was the person involved. For those who don't know what we're talking about, was they didn't hijack the plane, but
wrong word.
Basically, somebody got hold of the hostie's mic and sort of explained that the plane might have been going down, and to brace and just cause all sorts of chaos on the plane before it got explained, and the pilot had to come on and sort of say it wasn't true. And I think they were on their way to America, and they might have got to Hawaii and were booted off the plane back in what was a different era back then. But so that was when I was still playing. I was still at Hawthorn. So I think I missed that. By about 2 or 3 years, because a lot of the guys, the story was still going around by the time I arrived at the Bulldogs.
That's probably where I got my mixed messaging from.
Before we probably move on from the doggies, the very famous and well said story around the baby Bombers and that 2000 game, the last round of the year, and the Bombers were undefeated, and they were just smashing teams. They were just unbelievable. Sheeds had them, and they had such a good side, a good list, but. You managed to break the streak, and I know your innovation around everything that we've already spoken about, but in particular this, I know, part of this was actually, you spent a lot of time overseas and working out other codes and how they went about their games and their game styles. But can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Essendon had beaten everyone by basically beat up on everyone. I don't think Essendon, that Essendon team was the best team on paper that I've ever seen in my time playing or coaching. I always leave the Hawthorn side that I play with, because that what they did was incredible, but you were involved in it, so it's a bit difficult to judge. So I don't think they were the best side. I think probably the Brisbane side, their three-peat was probably the best side that I've seen over my journey, but certainly the gap between 1 and 2, that was the biggest year that I can ever remember in the game. Just their abilities and where they were at versus the second side. The second side was an average side in a given year, and they were an excellent side in their given year. So there was on any given day, it was a 6.5, 7 goal gap between them and what I would consider, say, second or third best sides in the competition. So it was a tough task. They had beaten us early in the year by 10, 11 goals, I think, and given us a nice touch-up. So we're coming up against the second last game of the year. We've got injuries. We had a few of our real key players out. I think Paul Dooley played almost his second or third game for us as a secondary ruckman, because Luke Darcy was out of the side with injury. We had probably 5 or 6 key players out. We went to match committee first up on the Monday morning and started just working the whiteboard and having a look at it. And I started looking around, and I've got Mitch Hahn, who at that stage had played, I think, 8 games, lining up size-wise and that on James Hird. Not sure how that's going to go after 8 games. Mitch might be able to take him on a little bit later down the track when he's got 150, 200 games under his belt. But at 8, it was a bit of a task. We had young Robert Murphy in the side at the time, and he's about 11 stone ringing wet. I think that was probably being generous to him. So he was going to be lining up on Mark McCurry. And Bob at that stage was probably into his 4th game. So we just started doing it. Go, with the side that we've got at the moment, playing them on their merits, I don't think we can beat them. So we finished match committee and I had a couple of ideas in mind. So I went and grabbed a coffee with a couple of my senior players, sort of said, look, this is what we did this morning. I think it's going to be a real tough task. Do you trust us enough to try something completely different? We've only got 7 days to put it in practice. We had actually trialled some of it pre-season and we hadn't come to a definitive conclusion whether it would work or whether it wouldn't work, and sort of said, do you want to try something completely different? We were still playing for finals, so we had a fair bit at stake at the time, and the boys sort of went, I had a bit of trust with them by that stage, and they went, yep, we'll back it in and we'll have a go. And so I'd been across to America over that summer and done some work with a few of the clubs and spent time with their coaching divisions, showing them our footage of how we play. How would you structure it up differently? This is how many players we've got on the ground at any one time. How would you structure up the ground? And at one place, which was the Denver Broncos, when we were there, they gridded the ground, let's call it basketball zone defence. And so they sort of said, well, we push maybe 14 back behind the ball and only have 4 in front of the ball. Like so many of the transition sports, if you think about hockey, everyone gets back, then you flow forward with the play. Soccer, very, very similar. You flow forward with the play. So we sort of said, and we did some work on it with them, and then come back to Australia over the summer, did some work on it, had a few little mini sessions to sort of see whether it would work. Down at the Whitten Oval, it was howling gale, 7-goal wind going one direction, and so it just didn't quite figure out whether it was going to work or not. So that week, I went to the press and sort of said, look, we're having a really quiet week on the track. We're playing Essendon. We're going to treat it like a grand final. And we're virtually grand final week. What do? You kick the ball around the park a little bit, on the field for 15, 20 minutes, just get a little bit of touch and just make sure your body's right for the grand final.
More for the media.
Yeah. So that's what we sort of said to the media. So the media would come down, they'd see us, we'd run out onto the Whitten Oval, kick the ball around, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, blow the whistle, everyone off the ground. Essendon spies were watching exactly the same thing, had listened to the media of what we sort of said, and so the media were, okay, well, that's all they're doing, Essendon spies, that's all they're doing, I'll report it back. So then we'd all jump into our cars, drive down the Geelong Highway to the Werribee ground, who were our VFL affiliate at the time, and we had the whole ground gridded out, painted grids on the ground about where all our players were going to stand. So the whole preface of it was try to win the ball, try to play first up. As soon as we lose possession of the ball, in basketball terms again, we're playing zone defence. So you don't have an opponent. Trying to tell Scotty West that he couldn't go after the ball anymore, or he couldn't go after his opponent to try to stop him, which was Joey Massey, was his opponent. He's going, well, if we just drop back, Joe's going to have 45 touches. So this week it ain't about whether you have 45 touches or you having 27. It's about trying to win. And that's all we're see whether we can do something different and try to get a result. He had a brilliant game, Westy, anyway, as he always did. So we went down, we gridded the whole ground. We had 3 training sessions at it. They had no idea what we were trying to do. We called it, it had 2 names on the night. I used to, every week I'd have a theme for the week. And so it was Mission Possible. Mission Impossible was around at the time on the theatre. So we called ours Mission Possible, that we could take them on. And the subline was the night of frustration. We call it the night of frustration. So we're going to be doing something that they've never ever seen before on a footy ground, and we'll see whether they handle it.
Wow.
So game starts off. It all starts that way. We get the ball early and get the first couple of goals, which was really important for us. But then we're giving ground for the rest of the game. So as soon as we lose possession, they're attacking. We're sitting back defending. Rope-a-dope. You know, Muhammad Ali, for those that don't recall or remember, Ali had to take on a bigger, stronger opponent in George Foreman. He sat back on the ropes and just sucked him in. They were fighting over in Africa. It was 120 degrees or whatever it was. And so he just sat back, did no work, let Foreman just punch himself out till he got that tired, and then Ali attacked at that stage. So we were just sitting back. They were trying to get through. It was something crazy, like the Collingwood Adelaide game on Saturday night, but it was 75 to 35 inside 50s, and I think if you'd stopped it at three-quarter time, our inside 50s were probably about 15. So it was just attack, but they couldn't take a mark inside forward 50. We were so gridded out, and the only ones that they took were right out on the outskirts where we hadn't gridded so much. So we'd give them the boundaries, but we wouldn't give them anything, in the middle part of the ground. And so that's how it sort of played out. And at half time, I always had a laugh at half time that there was a bit of a blue right on the halftime siren. Johnny Barnes had whacked
Jono or something.
Brad Johnson, and Brad Johnson had gone back and was giving him a bit, and players got involved, and players coming from everywhere, and because obviously they were not used to what they had been witnessing, the Bombers. They were a few points in front, and I've come running down, and our blokes had steam coming out of them everywhere, and I've come down and I'm laughing, and they're all sort of like, "What are you doing?" I'm going, "What do we call the night?" What do you mean? The night of frustration. Well, they look bloody frustrated to me. And that's so all of a sudden they've all, okay, I get it now. And so we went on third quarter, they started getting on top. Eventually, you give them half time. Quarter time's not a long time in a game of footy in any sense to try to change things. Half time, they could restructure a few things. They started getting on top of us. And we had always said to our guys, like rope-a-dope, there's going to be a stage where we're going to have to go on the attack, on the offensive. But we need to be close enough to them when we flip it to go onto the offensive. And that's how it played. But they were starting to get a bit far in front of us. So we get to three-quarter time, and they're about 2.5, 3 goals in front. And I didn't want to call it a three-quarter time because I thought it was too obvious. And again, it would give them time to sort of get settled. I wanted to call it in quarter. But we told our guys, okay, get ready for the call. And we set it up at three-quarter time. So we had Chris Grant playing as the loose in defence. We had blokes like Rowan Smith, who's one of our best users and a prodigious goal scorer when we wanted him to be, playing in defence. I think Nathan Brown was playing across half-back. We sort of said, Granty straight back to centre forward. Smith and Brown will be going forward. We'll have a completely different look once we pull the trigger, but we have to wait to pull the trigger. So we waited, sort of like 6, 7, I think it was about the 8 or 9 minute mark of the last quarter. They were 3 and a bit in front, and we're going after them. And you think about a team that has sat back the whole time. We'd done no work.
Yeah.
They had been trying to find a way through. They were doing all the work. So they were knackered by that stage, and we hadn't done any work at all. The call of the game sounds exactly the opposite. The callers, because they'd never seen it before, didn't understand what was actually going on, and they thought they were getting on top of us and wearing us down, but they were just getting on top because they were starting to find little holes. Now all of a sudden we've got all the energy, and you release a group of blokes and sort of say, attack. Now we're and they were just after it. And Granty, did some heroics and kicked some great stuff. Stephen Collingwood had a magnificent game, kicked some really important goals for us in that particular game. I mentioned Scotty West, was brilliant through the middle of the ground. We really went after them at 100 miles an hour, and it started getting closer and closer, and you could sort of see them getting a bit more nervy and a bit more nervy, and our blokes growing in that last stanza. And obviously the Chris Grant goal around his body was real cap off for the game. We kicked a goal after the siren in the game, so we ended up winning by a kick and a half, but it was something that they just didn't see coming. I think if you speak to Essendon people, they're still dirty because they reckon we cheated them out of a win because it was not in the spirit of the game. But what's the spirit of the game? I mean, the spirit of the game is doing whatever you can. If you're coming up against a superior team, doing whatever you can to make yourself competitive. Could you do it all the time? No. But on a one-off, it was a little bit of history.
Well, and it would have been a perfect season for the Bombers had they won that night. I think that was their only loss, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's what they were dirty on.
Yeah,
I think
fair
that they were, but the flip side of that was it gave them a sting to sort of say, for Sheeds, to sort of say, well, you've just seen anything can happen on a playing field, so we have to be ready for whatever people are doing. And all it did was just really sharpen them up, and I don't think from that stage anyone got within 10 goals of them.
Yeah, that's nuts.
It's and it's like you said at the start of the podcast about following the leader, and then eventually I think of like the mid-2000s when there was that more negative style defensive play that Swans winning premierships, and that probably stemmed at probably your tactics that day probably started that kind of, or thinking that, well, this is how we can wear down opposition. But speaking of the Swans,
just on that point first, before we roll on, I have no doubt that's the case. Once we did that on that night, that was 2000 Olympics were on that year. And so all the coaches and assistant coaches went up to the 2000 Olympics and looked at transition sports. And as we mentioned earlier, that's when the game started to become professional rather than semi-professional or amateurish even. So what ended up eventuating, and it probably took from there until 2008 to really develop, but was developing along the way, was that press that we played being pushed forward, the forward press, and it was Clarko's cluster. But if you think about what we were doing was exactly right, but rather than retreating, take it all the way forward and not let them, they couldn't get through to score off us. Well, if you now take that into your forward half, now they can't even get the ball to their centre of the ground. And that's what the game developed into after that period of time. I think I know where we're going next.
Well, I was actually going to skim over that because we can't say too much other than we've just heard a few rumours that probably through the mouth of Paul Roos and that it was very nearly the Sydney Swans coach for a while there, Terry.
Well, Roosie was in the papers this year actually was sort of saying that he thinks I would be pretty okay with the way that it all
how it transpired.
Transpired, but look, it was a messy time. It was a really messy time. I left the Bulldogs. I wouldn't have left the Bulldogs if I wasn't threatened for my position at the footy club. They had a new CEO who I will say to this day, Campbell Rose, who did a fantastic job. The facilities that they got down at the club, he did a lot of that sort of work behind the scenes with government grants, and so he was really good for the Bulldogs. He just wasn't really good for me. And he come in on his first day and basically sort of said, "Look, I'd let you go now. I'd been there 14 years. I'd let you go now, but the board have told me, you've got 12 months." We had just brought in all those young boys, a few of those ones that I was sort of mentioning, Brian Lake is another one. But, we brought in a raft, Gene Siracusa, Gilby, Hargrave, all those guys had just come in. They're all 18 or 19. So we knew we were going to have a little down curve for a couple of seasons before we come up again. And I knew we wouldn't play finals within the 12 months. And he's telling me, well, if we don't play finals, you're not going to be there. So what do you do when someone does that? Do you stick around or do you jump? I jumped, and that's what I did. I've always had regrets, and I've spoken to David Smorgon about it. Me and Smorgon had a really good relationship. I probably should have gone to him. Not probably. I should have gone to him and sort of said, "Is this your doing, or is this just a brash new CEO trying to make a statement?" But I never did that. I just got angry about it and frustrated that all the work that I'd done counted for nothing. And so I tried to jump ship. I thought I was going to be going to Sydney. It didn't end up panning out that way. It was people power. And it wasn't people power against me, but it was the Sydney Swans, all of a sudden, for the first time, their supporter base getting behind their own. And Roosie had gone up there and done a great job. He was there, a great player for them. Hopefully I was the same, for the Bulldogs late in my career. He was their interim coach, which I was the same at the Bulldogs. So I understood exactly where he was at. I did ask them that question at the time, but and it just didn't play out the way that I thought. The people power got behind Roosie, the players up there got behind Roosie, the supporter base where they decided that they, perhaps was going to go down one direction and decided that they'd go a completely different way, which left me absolutely completely in the lurch. I was Black Bart with the black hat on, sort of riding off into the sunset with no club at that stage. But I can assure the Bulldog supporters that listen to this is there was no way known I would have gone for any other reason bar that I felt like I was being pushed at the time. Yeah. So.
Well, it all worked out okay from what we hear. But the phone call for the Tigers, I mean, how does that come about? And they obviously weren't the only club, obviously, on the hunt either.
Yeah, so I had a couple of years out in the media, which I really enjoyed. It was sort of like you see the coaches today that are not in a rush to get back into the hot seat. There's more earning capacity now than what there perhaps was back in those times in both roles.
Well, now I actually look and I go, wouldn't you just want to stay in the media?
Yeah. Well, I suppose it depends on how much of a footprint you can get in it. Like if you're the Gary Lyons, Jason Dunstals of the world, Dermot Burtons of the world, why would you ever go into a coaching scenario which you have some control of, but what players you have and what abilities you have will have a big judgment call on whether you're successful or not. We've seen Premiership coaches go to average clubs and not be able to turn it around. So why would you do that if the earning capacity in the media is strong enough? That's it. So I'd been in the media, but because of the way that I'd left, I had this sort of unfinished business part of me there that, I was public enemy number one for quite some time, and it left a sour taste in my mouth. My own doing, but I didn't think that was the way it was going to play out. And so I would hate that to be my last football act. So I always sort of had the feeling that I'd go back. And Tigers called, sort of mid to late in the season prior to me getting there.
And that was after, it was Spud, Danny Foley?
So Spud was there. He was still coaching at the time, but they had mentioned to Spud that they were moving on. And so we had some discussions over that period of time where that looked like the place that I was going to end up. A little bit of unfinished business there as well, the fact that I'd spent 12 months there as a player after leaving Hawthorn, but it didn't work. There was nothing bad, it just didn't work, and I moved on to the Bulldogs very quickly after that. So I'd had relative success at the Bulldogs, I'd had success at Hawthorn, and it had been an ultimate failure at the Tigers. So I sort of went, I'd like to go back and sort of see whether I could actually do something or contribute something to Richmond as well. So that was sort of the little opening. But then very, very late in the piece, end of season, all wrapped up, everything done, I got a phone call from Hawthorn sort of saying, well, would you perhaps consider us? Well, I hadn't signed anything. I wasn't with Richmond, but I had committed a lot of time and energy into the Richmond process. So I was a fair way down the track with Richmond by the time Hawthorn came calling. So in due diligence, but in respect of a club that you're a premiership player for, I went through a process with them, which was presenting to their board, and for a few reasons I decided it just wasn't right. The lateness of the call was one of them. I had a son who within the next couple of years was going to be coming through the system, father-son at Hawthorn.
Oh, okay.
Being the senior coach there, if you don't pick him, right, you're the world's worst dad of all time. You've got the right to be able to pick him. If you do pick him, is there favourites, being played? And I just thought that
Nepotism,
I thought that could get very awkward. And so I sort of thought, well, that might get in the way of a few things. There was a few people when I left Hawthorn that weren't happy with me, leaving the footy club. I was told by more than one that I'd be never welcome back to the football club once I left. But then things turn, and then all of a sudden it's a different group of people, and you are welcome back. But that sort of stuck in my mind. If it didn't work out, well, those people who sort of said I'm never welcome back, how much behind the scenes rattling would they be doing? So, there's a few little reasons why it sort of never worked out. But one of the other big ones was they had Hawthorn people all the way through, and I thought it was sort of overwhelming for the young playing group. They'd had Peter Knights coach them, they'd had Peter Schwab coached them along the way, Ken Judge coached them. So it was all Hawthorn. I thought they actually needed to get away from that. Then you had, Jason and Dermot were on the board. There was a lot of past 80s history sort of thrown in their faces. I thought they probably needed to go past that. And that's not hindsight with Clarko and what he did. That's genuinely the way I would have been the fourth ex-player in a row to coach them. And I didn't think that was necessarily right.
Well, it all worked out for the Hawks eventually too. But again, we're talking off air. You birthed a lot of these Richmond players in your time that went on to have a lot of success, like Cochin and Rance and Rewalt. These guys that you obviously gave their AFL careers a start. But what about that 2006 season with the Tigers? I think was it 05 or 06 where got off to a flying start, top 4 team for pretty much the first half of the season, and the famous Nathan Brown leg break, and then that just seemed to be the curse. But what are your memories of that season?
It was highs and lows.
Well, it sounds very similar than the 96, 97. You're coming from a low place to all of a sudden shooting up.
Well, so they Danny's last year, and Danny had more success on field than what I had with them. But the last year was a disaster, which quite often last years of your coaching ranks are that way. But they lost 15 in a row on my arrival. So it was a pretty low base that we got to. We changed a few things up, and we got rolling and had a reasonable start to the year. It was based around, obviously, Richo being Richo and how good he was. I think a new, fresh voice coming in and being able to work with Matthew, I think probably helped. It's the sugar hit sort of moment. I had Nathan Brown back under my coaching tutelage. Everyone sort of gets the timing mixed up. The 2 years I was in the media, Nathan left the Bulldogs and went to Richmond. There was no connection that I was going to be following him going to Richmond or anything like that.
So you don't know much about his deal that he got. Apparently there was
land involved.
Bit of land involved with his contract.
Absolutely, to be honest, absolutely zero to do with it. But when they were looking for a new coach, obviously Brownie went to the board and sort of said, I've worked with Plough, and so that's where the connection was there. When I was courted by senior players, it was Kane Johnson, Wayne Campbell and Brownie that come around to my house and had conversation with me about taking on the job and those sort of things. So, yes, there was a connection, but it wasn't a connection of him leaving the Bulldogs and going to Richmond. But yeah, so it was 2005. We started off terrific. Brownie was on fire. He says he was winning the Brownlow. I'm not quite sure about that. But no, it was as good at 12 games as I've seen nearly anyone play, 10 games or whatever it was. So those two, Batman and Robin, down in that forward structure were just getting us over the line in games. We were honest around the rest of the ground and being able to structure up a designed structure that was going to get us enough forward inside 50s to give them a chance to get us results. And we were going along brilliantly. We were sitting, I think, 4th on the ladder. Played a Friday night game at Marvel, Etihad. I don't know what it was back then. So
probably Telstra Dome. Yeah,
Telstra Dome. Yep. So and that's where Brownie broke his leg and snapped it in the most nasty of nasty ways. And the damage that he did to the surrounding areas, muscle and tissue, and that was it was car accident material. And he was never the same player afterwards. Come back and tried his best to do what he could do, but was never the same player afterwards. And realistically, we were never the same team after that point in time. But as you mentioned, the one thing that I am very pleased about, I probably watched, once I finished coaching, I watched Richmond for the next 8 to 10 years more than what I watched Hawthorn or the Bulldogs, only because I had those kids that we started off with, and it was Rewald at one end, Rancy at the other end. It was Koch and Edwards through the middle. My last year, which was a year of grief, brought them Dusty to the footy club. So to watch those guys and to have spoken with those blokes and sort of said, this is what football could be, and then see them live their dreams, I really got a great kick out of that. Yeah. Didn't have anything to do with them. I'm big on, once you leave, there's an incoming coach, let him get on with his message and what he's doing. Maybe a text before a grand final, maybe a text when they won the best and fairest, but really I just sat back and just had a smile on my face about what they were achieving.
It's great.
The a couple of years later, how much involvement did you have? I'm sure a lot with the recruitment of Benny Cousins.
Yeah, a fair bit with that one. So it was interesting. Sheeds played a part in that.
Did he?
Yeah. So Sheeds rang me at home one night, and he'd just been over in Perth. He was doing his regular rounds of talks and things that Sheeds does. And we obviously with your dad involved, Wade, we'd done quite a few gigs together, sporties and just general corporate type gigs where Sheeds and myself had crossed paths. And so Kevin rang me and sort of said, look, I've just been over to Perth. I've met up with the Cousins family, and realistically, you guys are going to be just about the only ones with a live selection. Would you think about giving him an opportunity? And I sort of said, well, I need to look into it a little bit more, and I would need to speak to the young man myself and that sort of stuff. But I'm quite comfortable to follow it up without giving any guarantees to anyone. So that's how I started the process. We had done our own due diligence. All the clubs had done their due diligence, and he was in a really bad way. He was in a really bad place, and he'd been, for those that can't remember, he'd been delisted by the competition, by the AFL, for 12 months, and that had spiralled him worse. So for bringing the game into disrepute, I think it was. So that had spiralled him into a worse position. So by the time we spoke to him, if he wasn't honest with us, we weren't going to touch him. Most of the other clubs had already said they weren't going to touch him. So we met with him and had a full conversation with him. He couldn't have been more brutally honest about where he'd been and where he still really was at that stage. But the only thing that he believed that could get him back was the disciplines of what AFL football would be, the testing regime of what AFL football would be, the needing to be there at 7 a.m. in the morning and doing everything that would give him some form of chance of being able to right the position he'd put himself into. And a lot of people sort of said, well, why should he get a second chance. And I understand their point, but this is a champion of our game, and I sort of thought, well, maybe it was worthwhile looking and progressing it. So we did, and I won't keep it too long-winded, but we knew he wasn't going to be a problem for our younger boys because he's a loner. So he was always, anything that he was doing previously was in the privacy of his own areas, and he wasn't dragging. He wasn't the party boy. Yes, he was the party boy, but he wasn't the party boy with the players that he was dragging in. I can't speak about what he was doing in his West Coast times. That might have been the case, but very much was a loner by this stage. So I didn't have that sort of issue. It was just whether he could ride himself. So I got him there. We got him there. I didn't get him there. Met with the board once it was very interesting times. So the president at the time, Gary Marsh, was not really up for getting him. There were board members that really wanted to give it a go and to pick him up, but wouldn't go into board meetings and say that in front of the president. So I'm getting phone calls at home from board members sort of saying, look, if you really push this on the table at the board meeting, we'll jump ship and come to the other side, and so we'll get the numbers to get it over the line for you if you come that direction. So I had to do a full presentation about what it would mean to the club.
Wow.
More membership.
Yes.
We got 5,000 members that year from Perth.
Right.
People wanting to see him get another opportunity. Yeah, so 5,000 people from Perth signed as Richmond members that year. We hadn't had a great champion of the game come to the club probably since Ian Stewart, back in the day. So another reason. Bums on seats. It hadn't been a great time for the club. So getting people through the turnstiles, getting a bit of excitement. So we went through all those type of things. Obviously, we went through what could be the risk associated part of it. But my last presentation to the board was, up to you. We don't have to make the call. But if we say no other club's got a live pick. We're the only one that's got a live pick in the pre-season draft. If we say no, will you be comfortable with yourself if your radio goes off and there's the news on one morning at 6 o'clock and you listen to the news and there's been a champion of our game that's no longer with us because of the way and the nature of the way that the game conducted themselves around him, would you be comfortable in your own skin? To a man, every one of the board members, every single one of the board members said, yep, we'll go with it. And so that was where it turned. I only lasted 6 months of that year, and I was out the door. But I come back for his last game, which was the year after.
Yep.
He played his final game. It was at Marvel Stadium, and his parents were there.
Wow.
And I spoke to Brian on that occasion, and Brian welled up with tears, sort of saying, thank you to the Richmond Footy Club and thank you to yourself for the decision that was made, because for the 18 months prior to him signing with Richmond, they hadn't broke bread with him once, and they were able to fly across every Saturday night, Friday night, whenever we played, and spend time with him and, get back family core values. So the game is the game, and we all want to win, and we all want to do what we want to do. But there's a human element that still needs to be a part of our game that I think is really, really important. Every time I see Ben now, I give him a bloody big hug.
Yeah.
We don't catch up very often at all, but it was a special moment. I think. Look, he wasn't perfect. Once he sort of left the game again and went back to Perth. Obviously, that was the case. We all know that that's the case. Rapt to see what sort of shape and condition he's been able to turn it around. And look, I believe in second chances. Some people go, no, you've had your lot in life, but I believe in second chances.
Well said. It's really. I haven't actually ever heard you speak about Ben, so that was really good. And it's good, like you said, it's great to see kind of what he's doing now, and this chat's just been great. It's great to hear what a kind of progressive coach you've been in terms of just on field and off field as well, tactically and away from the field as well. But now comes the goodie bag part, Dos. So this is a fun part for you, Terry. What are you going to bring out first? And this is our way of saying thank you. But Jared's going to bring out the Milkman first.
Milkman Australia, Terry. So they're the kings leading the way in all things men's grooming. So anything you need in terms of feeling your best, feeling confident, looking good.
Well, I was a metrosexual before people even knew what a metrosexual was.
We're looking at some photos of you, especially in those Hawks days. Very good looking.
I know.
Yeah. So
the headband. He had
leather pants. For
Yeah,
these
before
people
Bailey
on the
Smith.
podcast, I actually did play at one stage.
Yeah, we didn't talk about playing.
It was a long time ago. But,
bloody good player.
3-time premiership player.
Couple best and fairest.
Is that
as well.
the freshen up kit?
He's got the natural deodorant in there. I think he's got a scrubbing brush too for the shower too. And what else is in there?
I think there's a cologne pack.
Cologne
in there, maybe
as well. Yeah, a few little fragrances.
How do we get
So
our
head to
hands on it?
milkmanaustralia.com.
these days, I need all the help I can get.
milkmanaustralia.com. Use the code dos&d for 20% off.
All right, next comes the Russell Athletic, Mitch Dowd, good friends of ours, Terry, and this is perfect. We should have said for Milkman too, right in time for Father's Day.
That is perfect.
All this sort of stuff, and Russell Athletic is leading the way. Yeah, I'm sure you've probably had your years in Russell Athletic gear. What have they got you, Terry? Can we have a little look in there?
Absolutely.
See what they've sent you.
Puffer jacket for a start.
Oh, the puffer jacket.
I'm a walker every single day. Never miss.
How many Ks are you clicking?
So I do about an hour and a half each day.
Probably close to 10K.
Yeah, but I'm very hills. Yeah,
Oh.
so because I've had 12 operations on my right knee. A lot of just scrapes and bits and pieces. But
it's a lot of bone on bone.
A lot of bone on bone. So so I've always been told that if I can keep my quad strength up by walking hills, you'll keep your knees in better shape. So I'm known as a walking man around my territory, so I'll be the walking man.
That'll be good because it can get cold up in that area.
I'll be the walking man in Russell Athletics.
That's it, mate. In there should be some jocks there for Mitch Dowd too. There's some PJs in there and some stuff for summer, mate. So they've looked after you for winter and summer. We do want to say Russell Athletic, in time for Father's Day, they are bringing out the R-Tech Leisure range featuring butter soft airweave technology for Russell. Perfect for Father's Day for the listeners. Head to Russell Athletic or Mitch Dowd and use the code dos&d40 for 40% off. Can you believe that, Terry? 40% off.
Lovely. Well, I'll still go, but I've been looked after quite well.
Yeah, we can look after you. Next, we've got Tommy's. Now, this will wash it all down for you, mate. Now, these are absolutely beautiful. Now, the boys actually got stuck into these earlier on. These vodka spritz that you've got there, mate. There's a few flavors. I think you got the mandarin,
Tommy's are an alcoholic beverage.
Yes.
No, you didn't say that. So the listeners won't know.
Yes, alcoholic beverage made for our friends at Tommy's. They actually own Freddy's Pizza in Chapel Street too, and they've got They've got a bit of Italian blood in them, so they've taken their family recipes and they put into a nice, refreshing drink. So Tommy's 01, if you head to tommysbooze.com.au, use the code Tommy's01 for 10% off, DOS.
Now, this is my thing, and I know Terry will like this. So once he has a few of the Tommys, the next day he can sweat it out. I know he's got a good home gym set up. Bring in the SUP supplements. So we've got the SUP gummies, so the pre-workout. They're leading the way in all things high-performance gummies. They've got BCAAs, they've got pre-workout, they've got creatine. Got some L-carnitine as well, but Terry's got the pre-workout, which I know you love a bit of weights, don't you, in the gym?
Yeah, I'm still sort of struggling away in the gym, an hour in the morning, hour in the afternoon, so still doing it.
Good. Well, you're looking fit as a fiddle.
But an ageing body needs a little bit of assistance.
And I have to
doubt.
say, Hasta approved as well.
Yes.
So it's approved. Everything is above board by SUP supplements.
So I am a health and fitness person, so I will use the supplements, the gummies, but the alcohol still come in handy as well.
And they taste like lollies, Terry.
So
just be careful. Don't consume them all at once. And you can buy some yourself. Head to supsupplements.com for 30% off. Use the code DOS&D. And don't forget, they're at Chemist Warehouse and Coles as well. So you can grab them in there. And Woolies too.
They're all over the place. You can pick them up there, but use that code. Why not take 30% off? Finally, to take it all home in, mate, is the dos&d tote bag. So in there, mate, is some golf equipment and apparel from our good friends Fleet Plan Hire Solutions. The listeners would have already heard all about the great work they're doing, but they like to look after our guests too, mate. So some balls, tees, gloves, and a golf towel, mate. So
the one thing that I am not is a golfer.
Until now.
But I have my two sons that will get out onto the course. So it'll
Perfect.
work out lovely.
Beautiful.
I'll tell you what, Terry used to do this on TSC Cup Future Stars. He'd be giving the gifts out to their guests. So now he gets to be on the receiving end. But
I know which end is better.
Anything else you want to wrap up?
Thanks so much, Plough. It's been a great chat. I know you don't do this at all anymore, so I feel very privileged and lucky what we do. So
Yes.
Well, as we said, Wade, we've had a wonderful family connection. I was great mates with your dad, Dickie, for a long period of time. Your mum's birthday,
Yeah, it was
just the other day. So
she said she was talking to Karen the other day. She was like, Karen said Terry's going on the podcast. So women talk.
Yeah, we do have that background. So I was more than welcome to come in and have a chat. And it's been great to catch up with you, Danny, as well. So.
I appreciate it. It's been a ball. We've loved it. I'm sure the listeners enjoyed it too. So thank you so much, player.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.